If you want to find the absolute most profitable part of the space industry right now, you actually shouldn't look at the launch pad.
Right, yeah. You look at the solar panels and the star trackers.
Exactly. You look at the reaction wheels. Today, we are opening up Rocket Lab's 2024 financial filings, and honestly, the biggest shock hiding in these documents isn't just their massive quarterly growth.
No, it's the fact that launching rockets is, it's rapidly becoming their side hustle,
Yeah,
which is wild.
it is wild. And that is exactly why you, the curious mind tuning in today, are going to want to pay attention.
Right, because if you follow the aerospace sector, you already know the big players in the vehicles.
But the mission of this deep dive into the sources is to get past the thrust to weight ratios and examine the actual business model.
Yeah, we're unpacking how Rocket Lab is transforming from this plucky small rocket launcher out of a New Zealand pasture into a massive end-to-end space conglomerate.
And the source material today is their 2024 SEC Form 10K, along with the CEO letter from Sir Peter Beck.
And the phrase Peter Beck used in his letter to describe 2024 was their, quote, year of execution.
I mean, execution almost feels like an understatement when you pull back the cover on their top-line financials.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, in the fourth quarter of 2024 alone, Rocket Lab posted 121% year-over-year growth.
Yeah, 121% in a single quarter. That is the kind of momentum that forces the entire legacy aerospace sector to sit up and take notes.
For sure. And when you zoom out to the full year, what did they hit? Like 436 million?
Yeah, they hit a record annual revenue of $436 million. So that's a 78% jump from 2023.
Wow.
And more importantly, they aren't just burning through some old legacy backlog. They actually signed $450 million in new contracts just last year.
So that pushes their total backlog to, what, over $1 billion?
Yep, over $1.06 billion.
I mean, $1 billion pipeline is just staggering for a company that started out focused purely on the small lift market.
Right, and they're still crushing that market. They completed 16 launches of their Electron rocket in 2024.
Which is up 60% from the prior year, right?
Exactly, making them officially the second most frequent orbital launcher globally and in the U.S. And they're targeting more than 20 launches in 2025.
But the launch cadence, like we said, is really just the hook here.
Yeah, it's just getting you in the door.
Right. Because the core of this 10K really revolves around Beck's phrase, end-to-end space company.
And understanding that phrase means you have to look at where the margin actually lives in the space economy.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, historically, launch providers were basically, high-tech maritime shipping companies. You drop off the cargo, you collect your fee, and you go home.
Right, you're just the delivery driver.
Exactly. But the client who owns the cargo, like the satellite or the constellation, they're the ones who reap the long-term recurring revenue from the data or communications that satellite provides over its 10-year lifespan.
So Rocket Lab basically looked at that equation and realized they were leaving the lion's share of the money on the table.
Precisely. They decided they don't just want to drive the delivery truck anymore.
Right, it's like a delivery company deciding, hey, instead of just driving the trucks, we are going to manufacture the trucks, build the highly complex packages going inside them, and eventually operate the warehouses too.
That's a perfect analogy. By owning the full value chain, building the satellites, launching them, operating the constellations, you capture those massive profit margins.
Margins that normally just bleed out to third-party prime contractors.
Yeah, you evolve from a taxi service to low Earth orbit into the foundational infrastructure of the space economy itself.
So to understand how they're actually building that infrastructure, we really have to trace it back to the vehicle that bought them their seat at the table, which is the Electron rocket.
Right, the workhorse.
Mm-hmm.
We all know Electron is designed for the small spacecraft market, so lifting payloads up to about 300 kilograms.
And as of the end of 2024, it's completed 54 successful orbital missions, deploying over 200 spacecraft.
But what's fascinating is how the 10K digs into the specific engineering efficiencies that make those numbers possible.
Right, starting with the carbon composite tanks.
Yeah, so traditional rockets usually rely on aerospace-grade aluminum or stainless steel. But by utilizing advanced carbon composites, Rocket Lab saves 40% of the structural mass.
Which is huge, because in orbital mechanics, the rocket equation is just ruthless.
Oh, it is. Every single kilogram you shave off the dry mass of the rocket is another kilogram you can allocate to a paying customer's payload.
Okay, so they save weight on the body. But then we get to the Rutherford engine.
Right.
The filing mentions they've flown over 600 of these 3D printed engines. But the piece of engineering that always stands out to me in these filings is the the electric turbopump.
Oh yeah, that is a massive differentiator.
So can we translate this for anyone who isn't spending their weekends reading propulsion textbooks? Like, what does that actually mean?
Sure. So traditional rockets use what's called a gas generator cycle. That means they bleed off a little bit of their own highly combustible rocket fuel, ignite it in a preburner,
Okay.
and then use that mini explosion to spin a turbine that pumps the main fuel into the combustion chamber.
Which sounds incredibly complicated and terrifying.
It is an incredibly delicate balancing act. That traditional approach requires a massive amount of intricate plumbing, complex valves, and thermodynamic management.
So lots of ways for things to go wrong.
Exactly.
Oh.
It introduces hundreds of potential failure points where just a slight pressure drop can result in catastrophic engine failure.
But Rocket Lab bypassed that entirely.
They did. They effectively strapped high-performance electric motors and lithium polymer batteries onto their fuel pumps.
Wait, so they essentially just slapped electric motors on it.
Pretty much. They replaced the volatile mini explosions with battery power to force the fuel into the chamber.
That is wild. And that must simplify things immensely.
It fundamentally changes the manufacturing bottleneck. You aren't machining intricate thermodynamic valves anymore. You're 3D printing the core components and dropping in commercially scalable electric motors.
Which translates directly to production speed. I mean, they can turn out an engine every few days with that setup.
Exactly.
Another piece of their architecture that the filing really highlights is the kick stage.
Right, because getting a satellite to orbit is really only half the battle. Getting it into its exact, specific orbital slot is where the precision lies.
And the kick stage is this unique third stage on the rocket that circularizes the orbit and precisely places the payload.
But the coolest part in the 10K is that it notes this stage can even convert into an operational spacecraft itself.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they essentially built a functional satellite into the upper stage of their rocket.
And we actually saw the ultimate proof of concept for that with NASA's capstone mission to the moon, right?
We did.
Well,
Rocket Lab used their kick stage modified into what they call their Photon spacecraft bus to send a NASA probe on a translunar injection trajectory.
that's incredible. And all of this tech is paired with what really is a geographical moat. Launch Complex 1, or LC1, down in Mahia, New Zealand.
Yeah, that facility has 2 pads and is licensed to support up to 120 missions a year.
Which, as the document points out, is a huge advantage. It's basically like owning your own private airport instead of waiting in line for a runway at JFK.
That's a great way to put it. Owning an independent orbital launch complex is a massive strategic asset.
Because most launch providers just lease pads, right? Like
Yeah.
at Cape Canaveral or Vandenberg.
Exactly. And when you do that, you are completely at the mercy of the federal range schedule.
So if another company's rocket has a ground equipment issue on a neighboring pad, your launch gets delayed.
Yep. But Rocket Lab dictates their own schedule.
And to make that work legally, there is this highly unique bilateral treaty between the U.S. and New Zealand governments, allowing U.S. space technology to be launched from foreign soil.
Right. And when you combine that regulatory clearance with the simplified 3D printed engines and the private infrastructure, the economies of scale become vividly clear in the financials.
I mean, the filing shows their costs per launch dropped from $7.0 million in 2023 down to $5.7 million in 2024.
A $1.3 million cost reduction per vehicle, that goes straight to the gross margin.
Which makes Electron an incredibly cash-efficient operation in an industry that is notoriously cash-burning.
Absolutely.
Now, that launch efficiency is impressive, but it leads us directly to what I think is the most revealing section of this 10K.
Oh, the space systems numbers.
Yes, because launching rockets gets all the public glory, right? But the financial documents show a completely different reality behind the curtain.
Yeah, the numbers here are pretty shocking.
So launch services brought in $125.4 million in 2024. But Space Systems, which is the division that builds the components, spacecraft, and software, brought in a massive $310.8 million.
That is an 80% growth from 2023.
I mean, everyone thinks of them as a rocket company, but they are actually a highly successful space parts superstore. They are making nearly 3 times as much money building space parts as they are launching rockets.
Yeah, they have quietly become the merchant supplier for the entire orbital economy.
Which is just a brilliant business move.
The 10K actually notes they have flight hardware on over 1,800 missions globally.
1,800 missions.
Yeah. They aren't just outfitting their own vehicles. They are selling critical components to their direct launch competitors, to legacy prime contractors, and to government agencies.
It's the ultimate Levi's strategy.
Right, like during the gold rush.
Exactly. During the California gold rush, the people who consistently made the most money weren't the gold miners. It was Levi Strauss selling them the denim jeans and the hardware stores selling the pickaxes.
And Rocket Lab is essentially selling the pickaxes for the orbital gold rush.
So what exactly are they selling? The catalog of components they've built up is pretty comprehensive, right?
Very. They manufacture reaction wheels, which are these internal, motor-driven flywheels that spin up or down to help a spacecraft orient itself in the vacuum of space.
So they don't have to waste precious chemical thruster propellant just to turn around.
Exactly. They also manufacture high-efficiency solar cells to power those satellites and the separation systems that physically detach the payload from the launch vehicle.
But the standout component in the filing, in terms of just sheer technological elegance, is their star tracker.
Well, the star trackers are fascinating.
The 10K details that these optical sensors use a catalog of 2 million star triangles to navigate.
Yeah. Optical navigation is critical because, obviously, GPS degrades the further you get from Earth.
Right, there are no cell towers in deep space.
Exactly. So a star tracker takes a continuous picture of the star field around the spacecraft. The onboard processor then compares the geometric angles of the stars in that image against its database of 2 million possible star triangles.
That honestly sounds like science fiction.
It does, but it works. By matching the geometry, the spacecraft instantly calculates its exact orientation in three-dimensional space. It's a massive leap over relying purely on heavy mechanical gyroscopes.
Now, Rocket Lab didn't build this comprehensive supply chain completely from scratch, did they?
No, not at all. The financial documents outline a string of highly targeted, aggressive acquisitions.
Right. Companies like Sinclair Interplanetary, Advanced Solutions, Planetary Systems Corp., and Solero Technologies.
Integrating 4 different company cultures and proprietary tech stacks is usually a recipe for corporate indigestion.
Yeah, mergers are usually messy.
But Rocket Lab used these acquisitions to execute this brilliant dual-pronged strategy.
A sort of Trojan horse strategy.
Exactly. First, they capture that Levi's market, selling parts to the broader industry. Second, they secure the supply chain for their own Photon spacecraft buses.
And for anyone who hasn't built a satellite recently, the bus is essentially the chassis of the spacecraft, right?
Yep. It provides the power, the propulsion, the communications, and the thermal control. The client just brings their specific camera or radar payload, bolts it onto the bus, and the spacecraft is ready to go.
And because Rocket Lab owns the companies making the solar panels and the star trackers, they never have to wait in a supply chain bottleneck to build their own buses.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
That absolute control over their supply chain is what allowed them to bid on and win massive constellation contracts.
Like the direct-to-device constellation they're building for MDA and Globalstar.
Exactly. And more critically, they secured a prime contract to build a national security constellation for the Space Development Agency.
But to deploy those massive government constellations efficiently, you need heavy lift capabilities.
Right.
Electron dominates the small payload market, but the physics of a 300-kilogram rocket just cannot support the deployment of thousands of heavy satellites.
No, it can't.
So to execute the final phase of their end-to-end vision, Rocket Lab needs a much bigger boat. And the 10K dedicates a massive section to the development of Neutron.
Yet Neutron is their play for the medium lift market, and it is a fundamental departure from Electron's architecture.
It's massive. It stands 43 meters tall and is designed to carry up to 15,000 kilograms into low Earth orbit.
And unlike Electron, Neutron features a fully reusable first stage that is designed to return and land on a customized ocean barge.
Which is a whole different ballgame. And the propulsion system scales up dramatically too, right?
Oh, entirely. Neutron is powered by the new Archimedes engine, which is an oxidizer-rich staged combustion engine.
And they are currently running it through this intense qualification process down at the Stennis Space Center in Mississippi.
Yeah, and the 10K explicitly notes that their rapid iteration process has already allowed them to shave 200 kilograms off the engine mass during production tuning.
That's incredible. And when it is operational, Neutron will launch from their new Launch Complex 3 at Wallops Island, Virginia.
But the real kicker here is the market validation. Neutron was selected for the Department of Defense's $5.6 billion National Security Space Launch Program.
Specifically Phase 3 Lane 1, right?
Yes. That contract selection makes Rocket Lab the only publicly traded launch company eligible to compete against the legacy giants for these top priority national security missions.
earning a spot on that NSSL roster before the vehicle has even flown its maiden flight speaks volumes.
It really does. The DoD clearly wants a viable, reliable alternative to the current duopoly of SpaceX and United Launch Alliance.
But here's where I have to push back a little bit. If you've been following aerospace timelines for the last decade, you're probably rolling your eyes at the 10K's target of a 2025 debut launch for Neutron.
Yeah, that's a very aggressive timeline.
We have seen how notoriously delayed these mega projects get. I mean, are they actually going to fly a brand new reusable medium lift rocket this year?
Well, a healthy dose of skepticism is entirely warranted there. The engineering hurdles for reusability managing thermal loads during re-entry, developing autonomous barge landing systems, they are immense.
Right.
However, they aren't starting from scratch. They are applying years of institutional knowledge gained from recovering electron boosters from the ocean.
That's fair.
That said, the 10K's own Section 1A on risk factors is highly transparent. It explicitly states that developing a new launch vehicle is a nonlinear process, and the timeline is absolutely subject to slip.
Due to qualification failures or supply chain hiccups?
Exactly.
And pushing that timeline has severe financial consequences. The cash burn required to develop a vehicle of this scale is just massive.
Yeah, the documents show their research and development expenses were up $55 million in 2024 alone.
Hitting a total of $174.4 million.
Right. Neutron is a high-reward gamble that unlocks the mega constellation market, but burning through that much R&D means they're operating with very little margin for error.
Which perfectly transitions into the fragility of the entire enterprise. Burning $174 million on development is a controlled financial risk.
Yeah.
But Section 1A of this SEC filing outlines a series of operational risks that basically read like a corporate anxiety dream. It highlights variables completely outside of the company's control.
Space is hostile. That's the baseline risk. It's an environment actively attempting to destroy your assets at all times.
Yeah, the operations are threatened by extreme space weather.
A coronal mass ejection or an intense solar flare can literally fry the electronics on a newly deployed constellation. You could have millions of dollars of hardware completely disabled in an instant.
And beyond the weather, there is the traffic problem. The filing points heavily to the proliferation of low Earth orbit constellations.
As more companies launch thousands of satellites, the risk of Kessler syndrome, which is a cascading chain of orbital collisions, increases dramatically.
So navigating orbital slot congestion and dodging microscopic space junk traveling at 17,000 miles per hour is just a daily operational hazard now.
It is, and down in the atmosphere, the ever-present risk of launch failures looms over the balance sheet.
Rocket Lab is highly reliable, but physics is unforgiving. They have had 3 electron failures in their history: July 2020, May 2021, and September 2023.
And the financial impact of a launch failure extends far beyond just the loss of the physical rocket and the immediate payload.
Because every anomaly requires grounding the entire fleet.
Right, exactly. The Federal Aviation Administration has to conduct a thorough investigation. That halts all launch revenue, often for several weeks or months.
Which strains customer relationships and causes a massive bottleneck in the manifest.
Yeah.
But out of all the dense bureaucratic risks listed in this document, there is one that forces a total double take.
Oh, the key personnel risk.
Yes. It is standard for a 10K to note a reliance on the founder. What isn't standard is a corporate financial document explicitly warning investors that CEO Peter Beck participates in, quote, high-risk activities.
Like recreational aviation, motorsports, and operating heavy machinery.
It's not every day you read an SEC filing warning you that the CEO likes to race cars and fly planes. And adding to that, the company explicitly notes they do not carry key person life insurance on him.
He is a stark reminder of how much of Rocket Lab's vision, engineering culture, and sheer drive is tied directly to a single individual.
It really is.
Synthesizing these risk factors paints a pretty clear picture. Running a space conglomerate requires dodging space debris, managing volatile rocket propellant, and hoping your CEO doesn't crash a race car.
And crucially, it also requires navigating the unpredictable winds of Washington, D.C.
Oh, definitely.
The filing shows that 33% of their 2024 revenue comes directly from the U.S. government.
Which means that dependency tethers their financial health to federal spending priorities.
So a continuing resolution in Congress that freezes agency budgets can just halt new contract awards entirely.
Or policy shifts from a new administration, or arbitrary budget cuts to NASA or the DoD, any of that could massively disrupt their cash flow.
Right. So let's pull all of this together. We are looking at a masterclass in corporate evolution.
We really are.
Rocket Lab started by launching small carbon composite rockets from a private pad in New Zealand. Today, they are sitting on a $1 billion backlog.
They have executed the Levi strategy flawlessly.
Flawlessly, dominating the space components market to the point where they generate the vast majority of their revenue, building the solar panels and star trackers for the broader industry.
And concurrently, they are pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into developing a 15,000-kilogram reusable rocket to compete directly for the highest level national security missions.
It is the methodical, deliberate construction of a fully integrated end-to-end space company, executed exactly as Peter Beck outlined.
Right.
Which leaves us with a final, provocative thought to chew on. As rockets like Neutron become rapidly reusable, and the cost to launch a kilogram to orbit plummets closer and closer to zero, well, the rocket itself becomes a commodity.
It really does. It becomes the least valuable part of the space industry.
Exactly. If access to space eventually becomes as cheap and routine as booking a cross-country commercial flight, the true monopoly of the future won't belong to the company that operates the rockets.
It will belong to the company that controls the data, the satellites, and the orbital infrastructure looking down on us.
So the question is, are we watching Rocket Lab build a launch provider, or are we watching them build the ultimate orbital, telecom, and data empire?
When launch becomes a loss leader, the company that owns the orbital real estate wins the century.
If you look at the financial X-ray we just unpacked, the real power isn't in the fire and physics of the launch pad. It's in owning the infrastructure of the future. Thank you for taking this deep dive into the sources with us today. Keep looking up and keep questioning the world around you.